Hey everybody, welcome back to Gamnesia After Dark. We've got quite a bit to talk about this week in terms of the Google Stadia announcement, but before that, we are joined by some very lovely guests, if they would like to introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Switched... Wait, this isn't Switched On, what is this? Hi everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Humulos. You may know me from the streaming, or you may also know me from the last Switched On, or you may know me not at all, which is the most likely case. So, hi, nice to meet you.
And as always, I am Steven, one of the writers here at Gamnesia. I guess the biggest news that has come out in the past week or so is that Google actually had a big conference at GDC and shocked the gaming world with the announcement of Google Stadia, which is their version of a game streaming service that should be coming out later this year, I believe. So we'll go ahead and break down the reveal in a few, but before we do that, do you guys have any initial thoughts on the reveal?
As someone who watches a lot of tech conferences, especially stuff from Google and Apple and Microsoft, like I keep way up to date on all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It went exactly as I would have expected it to, which is to say, not a great reveal for a gaming service. Speaking nothing about the service itself, just the way they presented it, just having was it Sundar, or I don't remember his name, but either way, having him come out there and be like, "I'm not a gamer," and I'm like, "Come on, man." You have plenty of employees. Get someone else out here who is a gamer to present this. But that's honestly how a lot of tech conferences go. The people presenting them aren't great personalities a lot of the time, even when they probably should get good personalities to be out there. Not MatPat, good personalities.
Yeah, I was going to say, they could have gotten MatPat to do the entire thing.
Like, was PewDiePie busy? Yeah, as for me, my first impression of the conference itself was it reminded me of all the bad parts of E3 live conferences. Unlike Humulos, I don't keep on top of certain of Microsoft, Apple, and Google when it comes to their own conferences. But just watching it for myself, I just felt like, okay, so does this mean in 5 years we should be expecting Google Stadia 2 drop to the floor and then everything goes dark? Should I be expecting that in a few years? But my first impressions on the service itself, on Stadia, I've had nothing but a very eerie feeling just creeping up the back of my spine throughout the entire thing. I will say, like, there are some good points to it, which we will get to in a bit, but my overall impression was, I don't like this. Maybe it's just the inner, man, kids these days, old man, like, that I'll become in a few years, but I don't know. I could not digest the presentation favorably.
Yeah, that's understandable. I was sitting there watching the conference, and there were definitely some high points. I feel like it probably went on like 20 to 30 minutes too long. There was a lot of repetition in what was announced.
A lot of buzzwords.
I mean, it was, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of hype for something that, we haven't really been able to get our hands on or see, and so
maybe.
Yeah, true. But at a certain point, it's like, what's the point? They're just saying the same things over. Like, let's just wrap this up if you don't have anything else to show.
Get on with it.
You guys really don't watch tech conferences. Goodness, that's entirely on par with like so many of them. They just talk and talk about nothing, and they are like, oh, we have this many installs on this many devices, and it's like, I don't care.
It's like, sure, the numbers sound nice, but what about the context?
Exactly. Like, that's very much like them.
Oh, boy.
I enjoy them, but they can be pretty boring.
Yeah, and it's like that whole segment with MatPat. Like, I will go on record saying I like game theory. Like, I'm not like a giant fan of MatPat, because there are some things he's done that I haven't quite agreed with, but I don't hate him as much as everyone else seems to. So like, as much as I liked seeing him there, like, that whole section could have just been cut out.
Yeah. Now, we've known about this happening though for a while. So like, this conference was not the first time we knew that Google was coming up with their own streaming service. And we've been looking forward to it, and it's not like this is the first time we've had a streaming service either, which makes me wonder...
On Live, anyone?
I'm thinking more specifically of PS Now. Have either of you tried that?
No, on account of not having a Sony system, but I am aware of it, yes.
I think I tried it a little bit back in the day, but I don't tend to use it all that much.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty normal reaction because it's not great. I wouldn't say it's bad, and it's gotten much better than it started off as, but it's still like there's a lot of problems with it. Like technical ones, obviously, there's a few there. You know, it's not always going to be a perfect stream, especially with certain types of games. But it also, the library is really weird. Like, as in, you can play every single licensed Disney game that was on the PS1, but there's a lot of other things that are just like flat out missing that you would expect to see on there. I don't know. Like I can't play We Love Katamari, for example, on there, which why not? We Love Katamari is like one of the best games of all time, but it's
We love Katamari.
Yeah, but it got overlooked in favor of Toy Story for the PS1. So it's weird. Which I don't know what the plans are for a library on Stadia are yet, but obviously that's something we'll have to see because there hasn't really. I wouldn't say there's been a great game streaming service as of yet. There's been some good tries, but I feel like we haven't had like a great one just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not hard to say that Stadia, at the very least, is very ambitious in what it's trying to do. Given that others, as you mentioned, have tried and not fully succeeded to the level that Google is hoping this will get to. And there's a lot of interesting things we can say about what's coming out with Stadia. It's okay, we can go ahead and get into the reveal a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you haven't heard, Stadia, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is a cloud game streaming service, which, unlike Silicon Valley's Hulu, is not contained in a box.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to work that. I'm sorry. So what this basically means is that the games themselves run on Google servers and Google hardware and are streamed to any device, at least at launch, that supports a Chrome browser, be it an actual Chrome browser on any PC, tablets, smartphones, Chromecast on your TV, anything like that. And so what this allows for is a higher quality, more consistent experience regardless of which device you're on. Aside from the fact that you can play like Assassin's Creed on your phone in the car on the way to grandma.
And I could verify that side of it is great. When they first did the testing period for this with Project Stream, as they were calling it, I did get in as a beta tester, and even though I'm not big on Assassin's Creed personally, I did try to give it a fair shot just for the sake of testing all this out. And whether I was playing at my home computer, which is set up great graphically, it's not beautiful graphics, but it does a very good job, or if I was playing at my work computer, which is a piece of crap when it comes to 3D processing, the experience was exactly the same, and it honestly performed better on my work computer just because my network is even better there. Overall, I didn't see like a whole bunch of network hiccups, to be honest. There were a few, to be sure, but like it wasn't a huge amount, and the latency was definitely there, but it was still the same experience in both places for the most part. Like I didn't have to worry about adjusting my graphics down because there weren't even graphic settings in the game. Like you just let it run at ultra quality and it would stream at 1080p for that one. They're promising 4K for the actual reel, but the beta was locked at 1080 and it worked. It looked beautiful. It looked better than what my computer would normally output, to be 100% honest. So I like that part of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And for myself, I own a MacBook, so I'm already locked out of a ton of games. But the idea of being able to play any game off of pretty much any Chrome running device, including my laptop, it sounds like a really good pipe dream. Like I wouldn't have to worry about graphics capability or my computer's own processing power. All it really comes down to is the internet connection, which can be hit or miss depending on who you're talking to. But for those who have no problems connecting to the internet and getting high speed connection, I'm sure Stadia would sound like a good fit for their own gaming tendencies.
And one of the nice things about it is because it's in the cloud, your game saves and stuff are stored in the cloud as well, so you can just pick up and, if I'm playing a game on my computer and I have to go to dinner, then I can just pull it up on my phone and pick up exactly where I left off, much like with the Switch.
Except you don't have to pay extra for that. That'll be included in the service. Unlike the Switch. And the PlayStation. And I can't remember Xbox. Does Xbox do that too? Do they charge for cloud saves?
I think it's included with your gold.
It's always included with your whatever you do. Yeah, whatever. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it.
Yeah, and then, as we touched on a little bit, the fact that this runs on Google hardware increases the quality of the game. They're shooting for 4K at 60 FPS at launch, but they have announced plans to eventually get it up to 8K resolution in at least 120 frames per second.
Good heavens.
How would that even look?
It would melt your eyeballs. That's how. Goodness, I don't even have... My monitor can't even handle 120, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm stuck with a cute little 60 hertz. But it definitely is appetizing, because I'm actually at the point right now where I'm looking to buy a new graphics card. I want to upgrade, and those things ain't cheap if you want to buy the top-of-the-line one. You're running over $1,000 for most cases. And it's very tempting to say, like, hey, you can just get this service and never have to worry about the hardware again. You'll just have to make sure you have solid internet. And I mean, I do, personally. I have solid internet, so that shouldn't be a major problem for the most part. But at the same time, it's also really weird to think about, like, not having the game here, not having it run locally, and just having it be somewhere else entirely out of your control, entirely unable to do anything about it if you suddenly lose the internet. So there's a lot to be scared of, I'd say, with Stadia, and I've definitely seen a lot of people coming out to talk about those concerns that they're having. You especially, Jeff. I saw a whole article from you about it.
Yep, and I don't know the exact word count, but it's like a 15,000 some manifesto about my own thoughts.
A manifesto.
Yeah, manifesto. It's one way of putting it. I saw the presentation throughout my entire lunch break at work. I got home and I could not focus or think on anything else until I wrote the entire thing. There was a lot that I wanted to like. I can tell that Stadia is, on the surface level at least, a very appealing prospect, but I've just had so many concerns that I just couldn't bear to ignore it. Sure, Google is already, making a big step as player 4 in the gaming industry to rival Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. To the point where they're having their own first-party offerings, which, of course, does sound appealing once we do see how they shape up, but there's just too much gray for me to actually just sit there comfortably and say, yes, this sounds like the right thing for me. I mean, even on the very idea of game streaming, I mean, especially with game ownership being an already very tenuous thing when it comes to digital products, it's just, sure, you can stream movies, shows, and music. You can enjoy a movie or any given song, but you can't play a movie like you play a video game, I mean, given the level of interaction, I don't know if it's a good fit, honestly.
So I actually have a lot of questions for you about that, to be honest, because one thing I've noticed is gamers are a very strange group of people, at least the ones I normally talk to, in that we're the only ones that really want to have physical items to hold for the games that we play. Whereas in music, most people are very happy to just download Spotify and just get their whole entire music experience from that. In movies, most people are happy to have Netflix or just rent something from iTunes or Google Play and just have that.
Including myself.
But with gamers, they, for whatever reason, you can, it's not even talking about streaming, but just digital distribution in general. You'll have a game come out and it'll say, oh, we're not doing a physical version, and people will riot. And it's why? Because for me, with music and movies specifically, I'm enthusiast for some of that too. Not all of it. Music especially, though. With music, I do still buy physical CDs. And with movies that I really like, I do still buy the Blu-ray disc. But I have a specific reason for doing that, and that's because I want to make sure I get the best quality possible. With games, it's 1-to-1. Whether you buy the game or download it, you're playing the exact same thing. So what is it for you specifically that makes you really want to have physical things when it comes to games as opposed to movies and music. Not even ignoring streaming in general, just like
just digitally speaking as a whole. So, right. I mean, it can't be denied that physical media, it will undeniably age and decay with time. I mean, to the point where a lot of old game cartridges nowadays, I mean, they expire, the internal batteries give out, the discs, they get scratched, they get broken, and of course it's pretty much unretrievable at that point. But and I will not argue against the convenience of digital ownership, of having all of your games, your entire library, just in one system, stored up and booted up, ready to go. But I don't know, maybe it's still the nostalgia of it. Maybe it's also because you're spending so much money on the software itself, to the point where you'd rather just have it physically. If one day, like, you feel you're done with it, you can just hand it off to someone else. But yeah, with digital games as is, we're already seeing the effect of, like, we're already seeing a ton of games just disappear from a digital storefront at any given time, be it due to a publisher pulling support from it altogether, i.e. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, or the PT demo by Konami, or a company itself just shuttering entirely and going bankrupt. Hence, a lot of Telltale stuff that has just gone and disappeared. But if anything, it's also like the security of it in light of these concerns with the digital atmosphere to your games. And like you said, it's not a problem that's exclusive to Stadia and Google. This is something that we've already seen. We've already seen, like, a lot of problems and concerns arise because of how it's been handled. I mean, like I said, ownership is a very tenuous thing for a lot of systems. Well, for most contexts, you can't even cancel a digital pre-order for a game. Sure, Nintendo, like, for example, they see it as, well, we always ensure like the best quality work, like, from our own developers. So of course, like, if somebody invested money in it, they're not going to take it back. But the option should still be there, to the point where they're now taken to court over it in Germany. And that's the thing, like, you don't own the game when you get it digitally. Sure, like, you still buy it, but you're buying the license to run it on your software. You can't trade that license to other people.
Yeah, you're renting it essentially from whoever you bought it from. Like,
exactly.
It's not yours. And I absolutely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely more into digital myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I also get, like, physical stuff can be important for that. And gaming is very weird compared to other mediums in that gaming companies suck at preservation. Like,
yes,
they are very bad at it, because, like, with movies, like, any movie that's ever been made, I can find it, I can get it somewhere or the other, and in most cases I can get it legally. Like, I can actually pay money to someone to get an actual movie the way it was originally made, and just download it right away. Games don't have that, really, like, and I don't know why. Like, I understand there's a lot of, like, licensing issues with a lot of things. Like, for example, like you said, Scott Pilgrim, that's not distributed anymore because they don't have the rights to the music, which is makes me terrified that my Xbox 360 will one day explode and I'll never be able to play that game again.
And that's exactly my concern too.
Yeah.
The only two reasons why I keep my Xbox 360 around is because of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, and Sonic 06. Full stop, no joke. I will never give up my physical copy of 06 for anything. And plus we can't even download it digitally anymore because Sega was ashamed of it. Hence another example of publisher pulling support. And it's just with digital media already being, like, as fragile as it is when it comes to ownership, the fact that you at least buy the games and download them, at least once a storefront disappears, like the Wii Shop channel, then so long as you have it downloaded, you're good. And of course, piracy is rampant in gaming because these alternatives to old media don't exist, or they're constantly shuttered by Nintendo. But when we take a subscription-based streaming service into account, like the Stadia, that's all bound to your internet. You can only access these by logging in, and the moment that a game disappears, it's gone forever. And that is already, like, one of my major icks with Stadia because of that exact scenario, which it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And of course it'll depend on the game, but people will complain about a game just suddenly disappearing because suddenly, like, maybe like with Netflix, a publisher decided to pull the license, or they had it up on there long enough, or just, like, maybe some other concern has arisen about it, or the company behind it has gone under.
And I definitely think, like, you're right. It's not a question of if, that will happen with Stadia. Like, you know, you mentioned Netflix. Like, Disney pulled all those different Marvel shows, and let's say that, you know, it was 2010 and Stadia already existed, and let's say it's working perfectly, and they had Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, they had the original Battlefront, they had the Jedi Academy games, and then Disney buys the Star Wars license, and it's like, well, these games aren't canon, so they're gone.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that's absolutely a totally valid concern, and it is it is scary to think about. I will say, though, I feel like that's more of a gaming enthusiast problem than it is a general gaming problem. Because while I would certainly be upset about that, I wonder how upset, like, just a random person would be if they suddenly, like, couldn't play a game anymore. Because I don't know, I don't really hear people, like, shouting about things leaving Netflix all that often, unless it's, like, a show they really cared about. For the most part, people are just, like, they just browse around and they're like, okay, this is fine. And I feel like that's about, yeah.
And at least when it comes to digital games, like, you wouldn't feel concerned about mainstream gaming titles like a Mario or Zelda game, but anything else, like a third party or something more independent, people would feel more not offended, but more taken aback. I feel like I can understand, like, the whole enthusiast versus general concern argument because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But, of course, digital ownership, that's not the only concern that has arisen because of Stadia's recent reveal. Steven, did you have anything else you want to add?
Nah, I think that pretty much covered it.
Sorry, we didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Nah, you're good.
You shouldn't have put me and Jeff in the same room, dang it.
No, you went farther into that than I would have.
We have opinions.
And they will be expressed, damn it.
It will be shouted to the heavens. I would definitely say, out of all the concerns I've seen with Stadia, I think those that you've just expressed are the most valid to be concerned about. I think people have a lot of other worries about it that when I hear them talking about them, I'm just like, that's not a problem. Like, I'm not worried about that. Where a lot of it has to do with the here and now, with the way the internet is. And there's a lot of concerns that make sense when you aren't thinking about how things have been in the past and how things have progressed in just the past few years. Things like internet stability, data caps, internet availability. Those are some of the biggest things that people have been talking about with it. But I also feel like those are some of the biggest non-issues going into it, because we have definitely I think there are definitely issues right now. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, not everyone has access to the internet in everywhere. Not everyone has access to especially good internet. But if we go back about 15 years, I was having to pay like 10 cents for every text message I sent. And,
I remember those.
Yeah, and these days, like, no company in the world would ever think about charging you for text messages. It's like, it's unlimited. It's included, obviously, because infrastructure has increased. The ability to handle text messages is now just like, it's nothing to even think about. Like, it's just, obviously the networks can handle text messages without an issue, so we don't need to charge extra for them. Similarly with just the way data works, like, pings have gone down, we've had megabits go up. 20 years ago my speed was on a freaking 56k modem and it sucked, and now I'm at 150 down, still at 12 up for some reason. Come on, fix that, please. But when they talk about Stadia being, and not just Stadia, but game streaming in general being the future of gaming, like, I really do personally believe that. Like, not just because, like, I have faith in any of these companies, but because watching the way that trends have happened over several years, like, I think it's the next logical step. I don't think it's a fad. I don't think it's an alternative. I think it's like, that will become the primary way that people ingest games as those problems continue to get addressed, because they will get addressed. Like, we're not going to have crappy internet forever. Like, it's increased exponentially year after year. So
I mean, if anything, it's like you say, it's not going to be crappy forever, but in the here and now, I feel it's going to be a very, very slow burn, considering the current state of internet infrastructure and service providers. I won't deny that streaming might be the future of gaming, or at least like a future at the very least. And who knows, maybe in like 20, 30 years, streaming is the norm and game cartridges will suddenly make a revival like vinyl discs nowadays. But
yeah, for all those hipsters out there.
Exactly.
Gaming hipsters.
But I think unlike I think when it comes to digital ownership, back to before, like how you feel that internet is second, I feel internet is actually like the biggest roadblock because of how things are currently set up. I mean, in North America, especially in the United States, internet service providers, they tend to stay out of each other's territory just to drive competition down, so that way they don't constantly have to one up each other when it comes to a more appealing like a pricing model or whatever, and then they just drive the prices up and services down as a result. Because as things are now, especially in this very fragile political age where net neutrality has essentially been an on and off thing, especially with oligarchic ISPs, their corporate lobbyists, and their political allies, it almost feels like Stadia as an avenue for gaming, it doesn't look affordable for the non-wealthy or the rural or those who just can't afford decent internet, or just have their own providers constantly cut and throttle it without any given warning. I mean, this is without getting into mobile providers and their own paltry data caps, because like I can't even get 2 gigs off my phone without having to pay even more out of my pocket to Bell. And it's just, and with net neutrality itself, we've already seen service providers just happily cut and throttle connections just without any reproach or remorse. If anything, like, I know this is a bit of an extreme example, but last year with the California wildfires, Verizon essentially just throttled internet for firefighters who've been trying to reach out to victims and people who were stuck in the danger zone. So how does stable streaming have a place in a world where ISPs essentially hold all the power, you know?
I think the main thing with that is that when tech companies like Google are out there talking about this sort of thing, they're talking about a very limited number of people in the here and now. And that number of people specifically being Californians, like that's always like the primary target of anything. That when anyone's talking about any cool new feature, it's going to be in California first. It's going to be more convenient for them. Everything's catered to them. The punks. Do we have any Californians in Gamnesia? I want to punch them. But there's also, with Google, they're very
wealthy?
Yeah, sorry, my screen just went dark. I thought I just went away for a second. I guess I moved my mouse a bit. They're very focused on themselves. And with Google, they do have the perfect setups to handle Stadia and to handle it perfectly without any issues whatsoever. Because they run their own internet service in several cities across the United States. I don't know about outside of it, but for them, they're like, that's what they're primarily looking at. So they see that.
So they already got a foot in the door there, yeah.
They do. So they're looking at it. Well, they're like, well, we offer like over 100 up and down like for free or something like that, and then they have gigabit speeds for a certain price. So they've got fiber networks set up in Kansas City, in a few spots in California and Texas. Those cities are the ones they're like really looking at. So as annoying as it is to say, they don't care about Ontario, and they don't care about Florida, and they don't care. I don't know where Steven lives. Steven, where do you live?
West Virginia.
Okay, yeah, they definitely don't care about West Virginia.
No one does.
And then it is kind of annoying to see that sort of thing, because it's very obvious that big tech companies, they don't have a lot of I don't know the right word, but essentially just not even that. It's just they just don't care about little places. Like, they can say they do, but ultimately the money is in the big cities, and that's where everything is going to go. And so, while there may be, like you said, bad connectivity somewhere, as long as it's working in California, they're going to be happy.
And if anything, like even though things are a crapshoot now, unlike on Live, which just plain shuttered down, Google has the money to keep Stadia running. So as things are now, like, if anything, it'll be a slow burn. It'll be like a small start, but over the years, I can see it finally picking up speed. It's just like there's a lot of roadblocks in the way until like it can be considered a norm.
Now, the unfortunate thing is that while I do have faith in the idea of game streaming, I don't have faith in it for every game.
No.
And that was made very clear during the beta test to me, because I did mention earlier that there is latency, and while it's not like awful, it is about the same thing as using a TV that doesn't have a game mode, which, if any of you have tried that, it doesn't feel good.
It does not.
No, but the game they chose to show this off was Assassin's Creed, and so it may be, yeah, I pushed right, and it took them just a brief half a second or something to start going right, it doesn't so much matter in Assassin's Creed because nothing in there is super time sensitive.
Unlike fighting games, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it will definitely be like context dependent on the game itself.
Yeah, I think strategy games are going to like be beautiful for this. Like you can have really big, beautiful strategy games on this without any issue. You can have like a lot of indie games on there without much issue. At least not the platformers. Platformers might be a little bit iffy.
Yeah, platformers, rhythm games, fighting games,
shooters,
racers maybe.
That's I'm interested. I'm interested. And I don't know if racers would be as affected because I don't really know if a lot of it is Twitch based. But I don't know.
Depends
I'd
on
have
the
to
game,
look into
I
that.
suppose.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. But a lot of games would be just fine. Like any RPG is going to be just fine. Adventure games, while not being like optimal, will still be fine. Visual novels will be just fine. Clearly.
Yes.
I said that one for you.
At the very least, I am concerned about about whatever pricing model they'll decide to go with, because with games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example, we've already got monetization and like loot in the game that you can just purchase and just make things easier on you. So, like, on top of having to pay a subscription, if that's the route Stadia is taking, you'd have to pay more money out of your pocket for these looter shooters and games, single-player games that just happen to have monetization shoehorned in, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Devil May Cry 5. It's just, at what point does the money-making stop, you know? Like, at some point, it just stops being ethical.
I think as much as I hate to say it, I think it will get worse with that, just because with Stadia specifically, who's running it? Google's running it. Google also runs their own mobile app store, and that mobile app store contains a lot of business models that are all the same, which is the free-to-play model. And I'm not saying that's a bad model in every case, but it is a very widely taken advantage of model by major companies. So I do expect to see more of that idea of free-to-play big games that are full of microtransactions, which, again, aren't always bad. Like, I don't know, I almost never spend a bit anything whatsoever in that, but I would prefer to not have them that way.
Exactly, because if it is subscription based with these games that already have all these monetization, quote unquote, player options in there, it's
Don't you dare.
It's not. I mean, obviously they weren't free to play to begin with, but they're not fee to play at that point. It'll just be fee to play, you know, and that, forgive my language, is bullshit.
Oh, this is After Dark. We don't have to forgive anything.
Oh, sweet! I can say swears here. Heck.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of my biggest concerns right now is just the pricing. They didn't announce anything on it. I think they specifically said they were going to talk about that over summer.
If anything, like if you wanted a good first impression on your product, pricing is probably something you'd want to discuss. Like, maybe not the exact numbers, but the pricing model, give it to us straight. Otherwise, otherwise all this back and forth negativity isn't exactly gonna enthuse us towards Stadia. Especially as potential content creators. Our next point.
I think this was like the cringiest part of the presentation for me.
Definitely.
I mean, they come out and say, oh yeah, gaming's the backbone of YouTube. But if you look at YouTube from a creator's perspective, it's just gone to shit.
Yeah, if I had to sum my thoughts up on the Stadia and YouTube symbiotic relationship, this is how I would sum it up. Pretty much. Just, I do not buy it whatsoever. Like, on stage, Matt, Pat, and Co., like, they talked about how this Stadia and YouTube function, it will bring about this golden age of content creation and monetization, but as things currently stand, that ship has sailed a very long time ago.
Especially for new entries. Like, sure, maybe like big gamers or big game streamers will be able to get like new deals with this sort of thing, but
yeah, Markiplier, Game Grumps, the completionists, like not to knock them down, but in these days in YouTube, if you're not already big, you're much likely not going to be. Especially
if you're not like one of those that you just named, where they've already bought into YouTube, where they're already like one of YouTube's darlings. Because, we have other big people like Jim Sterling, for example, who YouTube probably doesn't really much care for.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt YouTube would care very much about one of their biggest critics.
Right. So he, he's entirely funded through Patreon. And I feel like that's overlooked a lot by YouTube. Is they're like, oh, look at these guys that do so good. And I mean, they even left PewDiePie out of their big mural of big gamers.
I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. So I think YouTube is like, oh, we love creators as long as they're willing to play the kind of ball we want to play. And
which play the kind of ball that we want to play by our own rules that we do not disclose and change at any given time without notice.
Good heavens. It's This is why I only do YouTube as a hobby. I don't do it as a I'm never going into it as a career.
Yeah. If anything, I'll just directly quote what I wrote down in the article, just how moderation on YouTube is left to some arbitrary algorithm that constantly changes against the content creator's wishes without warning. Among many other issues, these include 1. Continuing to bury smaller channels and supposedly unsafe, quote-unquote, LGBTQA plus content, while happily recommending alt-right conspiracy videos. Falsely and randomly copyright striking videos in a system that has no qualms about upholding the doctrine of fair use, with video game footage and music being among the usual suspects, leading to stolen ad revenue the creator won't ever get to reclaim. 3. Heavily favoring entities who flag videos with copyright violations for any reason, whether they own the source content or not, which gives victimized channels, who can't afford to take legal action or have their appeals to YouTube denied, little recourse except to pull the video or risk having their channels deleted after enough strikes. 4. Burying videos from channels users are already subscribed to the point subscribers need to click on an additional bell icon just to be notified of new content from their favorite YouTubers, which defeats the purpose of subscribing in the first place. And 5. Pulling monetization at random because suddenly the video isn't deemed advertiser friendly. Just if gaming really is the backbone of YouTube as they claim, then they should stop paying lip service and start putting more effort into it. They should start by properly moderating their own network with a human approach rather than operating an imperfect piece of coding analyzing content without context, which over the past few years has continued to nonstop harm creators rather than support them. Like, sure, they paint a beautiful picture. Like, they make it sound like this beautiful utopia of monetization and content creation, but what has Google and YouTube done to deserve that kind of trust from their own YouTubers? Why should they feel confident in Stadia at all when they've always been punished and undermined by the very video platform they've been trying to support? The only reason why this behavior has been allowed to run rampant is because there is no alternative to a video platform as massive as YouTube. Like, aside from Twitch on the streaming front, there's nothing. Dailymotion and Vimeo do not even compare.
Not even close, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just personally don't even get, like, what Stadia is... Well, not only that, but why Stadia is supposed to be, like, some sort of great thing for content creators. Like, I don't really get that part of it. Like, they were trying to tell me it would be good, but it's like, okay, so, like, you're just processing the video on your end instead of me doing it. It's like, why is that better? Like... It's convenient, sure, but it's like, I don't understand how that's supposed to make, like, a new generation of people. Also, I don't want a new generation of people because they'll steal my ad revenue. I don't want that at all. And it's just I don't know. It's I just wonder how much, like, for example, MatPat had, how much faith he actually has in the platform and how much he thinks it'll actually help him, because I feel like he's the type of person who's like you guys, where you're like, I would rather buy a physical game and have it and be able to display it and just own it. I don't really feel like Stadia is like his thing either, and I don't really get, apart from obviously getting the money for promoting it for Google, I don't really get what else it would do for him or any other YouTuber. Like, I can't figure that out, so I don't know what angle they're trying to sell there.
Yeah, it just comes off as unrealistic.
Right. It's like, okay, great. So I can stream the games, but, like, I still have to make the content. I still have to be interesting. I still have to... I certainly have to edit them most of the time. I don't want to put unedited content up there.
And just if Google and YouTube's track record were any different, I would probably be bought into all these buzzwords and all these beautiful pictures about this YouTube Stadia relationship just fine, but... as history shows, they've been nothing but neglectful. It just doesn't add up to me. I'm sorry, Google, but no. I don't buy it. None of us do.
Well, if I could play devil's advocate here...
By all means.
Assuming that, these problems aren't a problem. Okay. That's a really big assumption, but just Google Stadia actually does, or is touting a couple features for content creators. One of which is crowd play. So, so if I'm a content creator playing, I don't know, Fortnite, and I have people that want to play with me, well, they can just click a button and join in a lobby, and I still have full control over the game, who gets in, and all that sort of thing, but they can just hop right in the game with me.
Multiplayer integration with your own crowd.
Right. So I think that would go a long way for audience interaction. Also, they said that in addition to the stream on your end to your display, that there was going to be a simultaneous 4K 60 FPS stream to YouTube. So if you're into streaming and that sort of thing, it just makes it that much easier. Because you don't have to worry about hosting the stream yourself. As something that I do in my spare time, I've been having a lot of problems with my computer being able to handle that. So it'd be great for me to be able to take advantage of that and not have to worry about letting my own hardware try and encode that video.
That does make sense, because I'm thinking about it more from I do more published videos than I do streamed videos. So that does make more sense, and it is nice to be able to just have the video happen from somebody else's server. I will say I absolutely agree with that, because if you're trying to do a really intense PC game and stream from that same computer, it can be choppy and difficult, and so it would definitely be nice to have that offloaded. So
it's like on that front, they're trying to compete more against Twitch than anyone else.
Yeah. Which they are, and they are doing an okay job with that. So I think this is something that could help them bridge that gap a little bit more on the streaming end. But again, only if they really actually keep their word and be actually be a good place for content creators. Because
right now it isn't.
Right, because it's weird to me, as someone who does do streaming on both Gamnesia and on both Twitch and my own YouTube channel. I hate using Twitch. I hate it a lot. Twitch sucks. But for streaming for actual revenue and everything, and just the way that it connects with the actual content creators, it's way better, on that front, on that side of things, which is why you see so many YouTubers who have access to all their subscribers on YouTube, who could just stream on YouTube, still streaming on Twitch. And I don't know, there's obviously reasons why they're doing that, and it makes me wonder, even with the benefits, would it still be worth it for them to go to YouTube and stream there instead? I don't know. Maybe. So I'd have to. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out exactly what it would do for people. I am certainly excited to try it as well. I would like to actually see how that stuff works. I'm not sure about how many games would actually support that crowd feature where they could just join from YouTube. Because
if anything, definitely their first party offerings, without a doubt.
Absolutely. Beyond that, there would definitely have to be API support for it. So any game, right now, it wouldn't just be out the box. You'd have to update the game to incorporate that API, get it to work, and
I'm sure PUBG, Fortnite, Apex Legends, right out of the gate. I can easily imagine that.
Yeah, the big titles will definitely do it. I don't think you could be playing, Mario 64 multiplayer and have people join that just randomly.
No, that is unofficial, but fun to watch.
Yeah, I think while there are reservations, I'm more so than anything. I wouldn't say excited is the right word, but I am interested just to see how everything plays out on all fronts. As someone playing the games and as someone streaming the games, I want to see exactly how it works, if it's good, if it will work out, and if I would actually. The big question: would I use it over the ways I play games now? And currently that answer is no. No, I would not. But I want to see. I want to try it out for myself and just really know if it's ready or if it's got to wait for a few more years.
Yeah, and if anything, if they do ever get their act together with YouTube, that's definitely not going to happen overnight. And as things currently stand with YouTube as a whole, like I said before, if you're not already a big player, you're gonna have a hard time just breaking into that scene as is. And as things and YouTube, it's helping about the U in YouTube, and these days seems to cater more to advertisers, corporate sponsors, cable networks, pretty much all the big players that we've escaped TV and moved onto the internet from, and they've followed us because of course they did. It just seems like Google and YouTube just cares more about them than the content creators. So if they expect us to just believe them on good faith, right now I'm gonna have to pass until things change. Things have to change visibly and much more obviously, rather than just make last-minute algorithm changes that nobody hears about, nobody gets a notice on, and then next thing you know, things just run worse. And that's pretty much all my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we covered a good amount of stuff. What about you, Steven? What are your final thoughts on Stadia?
I guess I'm kind of in the same boat as what I think you said. I'm cautiously optimistic about it. They promised a lot of really cool things. The ability to click a button or click a link from anywhere, be it email, text message, Facebook, anything like that, and just hop right into a game in as little as 5 seconds.
But do you have to buy the game? Do you have to own it?
Certainly appealing. That is one of the big things with the pricing. We don't know if it's going to be on a per-game basis or a subscription plan of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just a bunch of big promises to tell us what Stadia may be capable of, like how the Wii U, for example, is going to would have 2 gamepad functionality. That didn't happen. I remember Nintendo. I remember that.
So it's a lot of big talk right now, and I'm not going to say I completely buy it, but it does sound very attractive to me, but there's still a bit too much up in the air for me to really fully get behind it.
If anything, that's probably why people are a bit more receptive with Microsoft's Project xCloud and PlayStation Now, because at the end of the day, even if those services go under, you have the physical media alternatives just ready to go, if you know where to look, at least for the older ones.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't hit on either, is that there are a number of competitors that are coming out as well. You said Microsoft's Project xCloud is entering public testing later this year. I'm pretty excited about that, being a big Xbox gamer myself.
There's also Liquid Sky in addition to that. It offers pretty much the same idea where you just stream from anywhere, but it uses your own Steam library, for example. So there's definitely other options that are trying this sort of thing.
Yeah, and even reportedly, both Amazon and Walmart are supposedly working on.
Of course, Walmart
stuff.
Well, because that's exactly what we need: more storefronts on PC.
Yep.
Yeah, Amazon, I would be more worried about if I was Google than Walmart. But...
Yeah, I'd sooner trust Google than Amazon.
But so I think overall it's a really interesting idea at the very least, but we'll just have to wait and see how it gets put into practice.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, at the very least, at least with our concerns aired out in the open, we definitely won't have to worry about Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo going the way of Google Health or Google Plus anytime soon.
Nope. Or Google Reader, my personal favorite. I miss you, Google Reader.
Yeah. Just the one thing that I hope to avoid is that everything will be Chrome in the future. That sounds like a nightmare.
Wow. I wish I had thought of that.
That was really stupid and really good. Well done.
I'm very glad I included that in the manifesto.
Yep.
After all that doom and gloom I wrote down, it's always good to end on a joke.
Yes, always good to end on SpongeBob.
Well, I guess that wraps it up for us, unless there's any final thoughts. Final thoughts, I guess.
I guess my last remaining concern is just Google, I feel, is too big as a company, and I'm a little unnerved about this big brotherly approach, because they already collect so much information on their users to the point where it's uncomfortably invasive. And sure, while they say they don't sell them to outside parties, and Google isn't known for data breaches, Facebook, how long will that accountability last,
Oh, don't worry. They don't need to sell it. They make plenty of money off it just themselves.
Exactly.
All your random little information.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I just thought of what Google would do with my data.
Steven?
Oh, don't worry. They didn't keep yours. I guarantee they didn't keep yours.
And like I was going to say, if they learn about me from what I play, we're in trouble.
And I will say, as someone who is generally trying to stay on the bleeding edge of technology, and like I usually do like trying new things, this does appeal to me a lot. I am looking forward to giving it a shot. I do share a lot of your same concerns, because they are valid concerns. Like, there's a lot of valid concerns with this. But more than anything, like, I just like trying new things when it comes to tech. So I look forward to it when it comes out. I'll probably be one of the early adopters. I'll let you know how it goes. But if I get replaced by a Borg or something, you can say I told you so.
Yeah. 2 more things. I am not a gamer probably isn't the best choice of words to open a gaming streaming service keynote on. And 2,
definitely not.
Google can buy out my silence for $20 billion.
Well, I think that wraps up our thoughts on Google Stadia. What do you all think? Is it something that you're really interested in? Is it the future of gaming as Google claims, or will it fail to make as big of a splash as Google hopes it will? Let us know in the comments, either on this video or on the website itself. I guess with that, we'll wrap it up. I'd like to thank both of our guests for joining us today. If you want to follow us on social media, I can be found at RedRollinsYum on Twitter.
I am Visor Jeff Hogg on Twitter, and pretty much any other platform. Trust me, you won't have any trouble finding me.
Hold on, how did you just pronounce it?
Visor Jeff Hogg?
It's not Vizier?
Nope.
Wow.
No, like that whole username, it was about my 2 interests, like as a weeb going onto the internet, Bleach and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Interesting. I had no idea. Okay, cool. I learned something today.
Yeah, if anything, that was like the old romanization of the Visor before we got the actual English translation. So, you know what? It's stuck. I'm keeping it.
Neat. All right, and you can find me as Humulos on everything. If you follow me on Twitter, just be prepared for a lot of Digimon stuff. Sorry, but that's all I talk about. So,
yeah, on second thought, maybe don't follow me on Twitter.
Follow him with heavy filters.
With safe mode on.
No, okay, hold on. So before we end, the weirdest thing happened to me on Twitter the other day. I, in the middle of January, bought the My Little Pony movie on Blu-ray, and I drunk live tweeted it. No. And so, like, that was in the middle of January, and like a week and a half ago, just out of nowhere, this guy just like replies to one of my tweets bashing me for a comment I made about Rainbow Dash.
Oh my gosh.
And then like 4 days later did the same thing on a different section of that.
Now that's obsessed.
I'm like, what the hell? And I looked at his profile and it's like nothing but Rainbow Dash stuff.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, yeah, I better be careful what I say. I might upset the bronies.
Apparently.
Okay, people. Put safe mode on with that Twitter person.
Definitely. Oh, man. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We'll see you all on the next episode of Switched On.
No, that's not this show.
And maybe After Dark. Still getting it wrong. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
I am waving now. I am waving. Farewell.
I'm acknowledging your wave.